Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. If you're new to my channel, my name is Rita and I'm a little bit of a bookworm, and so what I do in these videos is introduce you to books that I have been reading. I share my honest opinion of them in case you want to then go on your merry way and read some of them. And so today I thought I would go through some young adult novels that I have been reading. Now, as some of you may know, I have been busy for a few years doing a PhD on Jane Austen, and the good thing about doing a PhD is that you can focus on one thing you really like, and the bad thing about doing a PhD is that you can only focus on one thing you really like. And so my love for young adult novels had to kind of be put in the back burner. And so it feels really good to now just be able to read whatever I want, and what I really wanted to do is focus on young adult novels that have been recently published. And so for this video, I will be going through 7 YA novels I have been reading recently, and I will go through the good, the bad, and the not for me. Okay, so please forgive me if I butcher the names of any of these authors. I will do my absolute best not to do that. So the first is That Asian Kid by Savita Kalhan. Basically, it's about a student who believes that a teacher is marking them down in English because they are prejudiced against them, so because of their race. And so because we get this story from a first-person perspective, so we are seeing things through the eyes of the student, it poses a really interesting question. Is the teacher actually racist against the student, or is this a student that for various reasons convinced themselves that they had to have the same grade in English as in other subjects? So you are reading it, and for a while, you do find out in the end, but for a while you are questioning whether it's one or the other. And so I thought it was really interesting for that reason. It kind of keeps you guessing. So I enjoyed this book. Overall, I thought it was quite a nice book to read. I thought it dealt with really important topics in a really sensitive way. I thought it was a little bit long, so I found myself reading some conversations between the friends of the protagonist, for example, and it felt to me like it was the same conversation over and over again. So I would say that this book could have used with a bit of a cut. Honestly, I think if we had had 2/3 of this book, it would have been absolutely fine. And I would also say that I sympathized with the protagonist to a certain extent, but I wasn't that keen on any of the characters. So they weren't particularly memorable to me, so I would say that, but overall I enjoyed it. The second book is Out of the Blue by Sophie Cameron, and this is one of those books where I actually preferred the execution to the idea. So the idea really didn't hook me in. So this book is basically about angels that start falling from the sky and the ways in which people react to them. Now, I'm a huge fan of fantasy, huge fan of magical realism, just not that bothered about angels. Out of all the fantastical creatures you could have picked, angels are definitely the ones that I'm the least interested in. Give me mermaids, give me vampires, give me anything else, but angels, I find them quite boring, so I didn't think I was going to be too keen on this story, but I ended up actually quite enjoying the book. So I loved the fact that it was set in Edinburgh. It's my favourite city in the world, so I really enjoyed it for the descriptions of Edinburgh. It made me feel really nostalgic about it. I can't wait to get back there. And I really enjoy the characters. So in this sense, it was the opposite of what happened with the Asian kid. And that Asian kid, I enjoy the idea more than the characters themselves. In this one, I really liked the characters. I thought they were very well drawn. It was a little bit too dark for me at points. So, for example, it features a cult of suicidal religious people. And even though I can absolutely see that this could happen, and very interesting points were made through the portrayal of that cult, I was reading it and feeling quite nervous as I did it, because I was always afraid of what was going to happen next. So I would say that if, like me, you are a little bit sensitive when it comes to things like that, then still give it a try, but just thought I would give you that tiny warning there. The third one is Moira Foley Doyle's Spellbook of the Lost and Found. And with this one, even though it has a horrible cover, terrible cover, one of the worst ones I've ever seen, but I thought the idea was really interesting. So, as I've said before, I love magical realism, and this idea of a group of teenagers going to a party and the next day waking up and realizing that every single one of them has lost something sounded quite interesting. Even more so when it then adds that the subsequent day they find a spell book with a spell on how to recover lost things. And so there's a bit of mystery there in terms of what happened. There's magic, which is absolutely my thing. And I also thought the characters were quite interesting, so I liked most of the characters. The only thing I would say about this book is that the writing style really wasn't my thing, so I saw lots of people complimenting it in the reviews, so it's probably just a not for me kind of thing. But it felt a little bit too dramatic for me at times. So descriptions like this character held her hand like she never wanted to let go, things like that, a little bit too dramatic for me, but then again, it might just be me. Number 4 is Nikesh Shukla's Run Riot. Now, this has a very interesting premise that is incredibly topical right now. So this tells the story about 2 teenagers who witness one of their friends being killed by the police. And these are teenagers who live in a council estate. So it's incredibly topical. It deals with questions of racial inequality, social inequality that are incredibly important. And so I really enjoyed it for that reason. I think it deals with some very important topics. With that said, thrillers are not generally my favorite thing in the world, and so I might just not be the ideal audience for this book. And another thing I would say is that it goes through different perspectives of different characters and also different timelines. So it shows you a now and then what happened a few hours before, and it keeps going back and forth in a way that I found quite confusing, and especially at the beginning I found it quite difficult to get into the book. And so I would just say that about it. Number 5 is The Lost Witch by Marvin Burgess. And I did not enjoy this book, I have to say. I think it might be my least favorite book of all time. I know, but maybe it's just me, but I just couldn't finish it. I tried, I really tried, but I just could not get through it. And I found it incredibly clunky in its execution. So we have the protagonist, and all of a sudden one day she is just in a park and this character comes to her and basically says, there is a hunt, something really horrible happening. Number 2, you are a witch. Number 3, you are a very powerful witch. We haven't had one of you for generations. Number 4, you have to leave your family completely and come with us. And for it to all be thrown at you within just a few pages of the book, I thought was incredibly clunky. And I don't know about you, but YA does tend to go for that chosen one trope. And even though I understand that you need to make your protagonist special in some way, I thought that in this case it was so heavy-handed, and I just couldn't get through it. I just couldn't get through it. Number 6 is And All the Stars Were Burning Brightly by Danielle Jawando. And this book deals with some really intense themes. So suicide, intense bullying. So it's not for the faint of heart. And I have to say, it was a little bit too much like 13 Reasons Why for me. And I couldn't help but worry that books like this, even though they are dealing with very important topics, they may fall into the same problem as that show of potentially glorifying and romanticizing suicide and portraying it as the only way out for these characters, basically. And these are things that are personal to me. I didn't particularly enjoy the colloquial style in which it was written, so some people might enjoy that more. I'm not that big of a fan. And it felt too heavy-handed for me as well, the way it was written and the style in particular. So passages where, for example, one of the characters focuses on a flower rising, growing in the middle of the concrete, and using it as a metaphor to think about their friend, who they are also something beautiful that has grown out of all this mess, and that just felt a little bit too heavy-handed for me. I didn't quite enjoy this style as much. And number 7, I saved the best for last, is Patrice Lawrence's 8 Pieces of Silver. This is the first book by Patrice Lawrence that I've read, and I really, really enjoyed it. And on a personal note, I think I can also blame her for my recently discovered BTS obsession. Yes, I was aware of BTS before, but not to this extent. And so the protagonist is a huge fan of BTS, and that was the beginning of my obsession. I really wanted to know what all the fuss was about. So I have Patrice Lawrence to blame for that. Thank you. My favorite thing about this book was the descriptions of the everyday life of the protagonist. So the ways in which Lawrence describes her just cooking her meals, ordering her groceries, watching movies with her friends, I felt was really endearing and made me really like the protagonist because I got to see what her everyday life looks like. I have to say that even though I really liked the protagonist, I didn't like the sister quite so much. So I understood the ways in which I was being invited to sympathize with the sister, and I definitely understood why she did the things she did, but I still couldn't get behind it. I think she just did far too many bad things, and ultimately I couldn't continue sympathizing with her. So for example, from the beginning, leaving her sister alone to go out and do her own thing, even though I understood why she thought that made sense, I still thought it was a pretty awful thing to do to your younger sister. So liked some characters more than the others, but I did think that they were very well portrayed and in very distinct ways. And another thing I absolutely loved about this book was the way it's plotted. So I read it in a day, I couldn't put it down, and I wanted to find out what was going to happen next. And so I would definitely say that about Lawrence. She really knows how to write a really immersive story that keeps you guessing and keeps you wanting to find out more and wanting to know what's going to happen to these characters. And so I will definitely be reading more Patrice Lawrence in the future. Okay everyone, that's my video for this week. I hope you have enjoyed this trip down recent YA books. And if you've read any of these books, then please let me know what you thought of them. You are very welcome to disagree with me, of course. And if there are any YA books you think I should read, then please let me know, because I do want to read more in the next few months. In the meantime, until my next video, I hope you stay well and safe and that you keep reading, and I will see you next time.